Hey everyone, this is Benjamin Dowerwolski from GKS Lifting and Moving Solutions, and today I'm talking with Bob Cullinan. He's the owner of Culinan Rigging and Erecting, and we're going to discuss with Bob his thoughts on the cranial rigging industry and why others should join this dynamic, exciting field. Thanks for taking the time, Bob.
You bet.
Yeah. To jump right into the questions, how long have you been in the crane rigging and transport industry, and what other jobs have led you to your current role as president?
Well, I got in the rigging business about 35 years ago. I was actually hired by a rigging company in the Twin Cities as a mechanic. So I started out, fixing semis, forklifts, trailers. That was kind of my role. But in the rigging industry, lots of times, a customer will call and a job will come in and it's not on your schedule, but you need to cover it. So a lot of times the riggers will grab the mechanic for an extra guy to go out and help. So I would do that. And I found I really liked it. I really it was a niche for me that I just liked it. So I went from being a mechanic to being a helper to being a foreman, and then eventually buying my own company. And I've had my own company now for almost 27 years.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it that you like the most about working in the crane and rigging industry?
Well, I like the fact that you're not stuck, waiting for a buzzer to blow to take a break or, sitting in front of a computer all day. Every day is different. Every day there's a new challenge. Even say you move a Haas VF5, maybe you moved 500 of them in your career. It's still going to be a little different because you might be putting it through a roof with a crane. You might have a ramp to go up. You might have cracks in the floor. There's always a different challenge. Even though you move that particular machine a lot, there's always going to be something that's different, and it challenges you, and that it keeps it interesting.
Absolutely. Many people who are outside of the crane and rigging industry, they might not understand, because when you say the concept of moving machines, it's like, well, I'm sure it gets done somehow. What's so complicated about it? Why is it its own specialized field? Could you go into a little bit about, to somebody who's not in the industrial space, why the crane and rigging industry is important and why it needs to have its own sector?
Sure. Well, you think of the history of our country. If it wasn't for the great manufacturers of this country, we'd all be speaking German right now. That's why we won World War II, because we could manufacture products faster than they could destroy them. So rigging and manufacturing were all tied together. We help the manufacturers. They help us stay in business, and they help keep our country safe. So I think that manufacturing is a huge part of our nation. It's part of our history, and it's going to be a part of our country going forward. We need to stay on top of manufacturing. And this stuff, it's not easy to move. I mean, it's a lot easier than it was 35 years ago because the equipment that you guys produce and other companies makes it a lot easier to work with, to move, to roll, to jack up. It's phenomenal. But I think it's great. I think that manufacturing is a big part of our country, and I'm glad to be involved in supporting that.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with you. I guess to sort of clarify what I'm asking, people they're like, well, that's all they do all day. They just move machines, and I don't know if everybody always understands the complexity that goes into moving heavy machinery and operating a crane and things like that. A lot of people would just say, well, those factories can just do it themselves. Can you kind of give us an example of where you guys come into play and, kind of give us a clue onto the complexity of some of these heavy machinery moves, if that makes sense?
Sure. And you're right. A lot of people, when they ask me what I do, when I tell them, they think, well, what else do you do? They don't realize how many machines are moved every day in the United States and around the world. And they don't, like I'm looking at a job right now. We're going to start in November. The biggest machine in that factory is 700,000 pounds. And there's one that's over 600 and one that's over 500. And then there's 3 other buildings full machines in the 100,000 pound range. Well, you need a lot of experience to move stuff like that, and you need the right equipment. So that's just something the average person that goes to work every day and does whatever they do. they buy their goods. They don't actually realize what it takes to make them and what it takes. And it's not just the movers. You have electricians lined up. You have technicians that level and set everything. Cement people to put footings in for them. It's a big industry, but a lot of people, you're right. They just don't realize how much stuff gets moved on a daily basis in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. There's currently a labor shortage in the industry, as I'm sure, being the president of a Cranial Rigging joint, I'm sure you've encountered that. Why do you think that is?
Well, like we were saying earlier, a lot of kids today, the computers and video games, also, it's a big deal in their life, and they like it, and they like being on the computer, and they like working with it and doing that kind of stuff, and that's not part of their crane and rigging business. It's a little bit, but not much of it. So to get kids to get out and to climb in a semi and drive an 80,000-pound truck down the road, or move machinery or grab tools and carry them, there's less and less that probably want to do that. But there's still a lot that do. I look for kids that are, honestly, a lot of farm kids. They're the best ones in the world to hire for riggers. They're mechanical. They get up in the morning, they work all day till the job's done. And I'm in an area where there's a lot of farm kids. So, and farms are worth so much money now, they're getting bought out. So now these kids are looking for work. So that's been a blessing for me. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard sell to get kids to do this kind of work, I think, as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you talked about, the mechanical aptitude and people who like working with their hands. I think the big message from the foundation's end is that there are jobs out there that allow you to do that. And the crane and rigging industry is one of those fields. And I'm sure a lot of the guys who work for you like working with their hands for a living and have a real passion for this. So to kind of jump into our last question here, what would you say to a young person thinking about getting into the crane, rigging, or transport industry?
I would say it's a phenomenal industry to get into. You can make a lot of money. You have good benefits. You do something different every day. It challenges your brain. And at the end of the job, when you get done, you look back at what you accomplished. It's a good feeling. If you look at the machines, like I said, this 700,000-pound machine we're going to move, when that's done and moved in place and you stand back and look at it, it's pretty neat that I did that. And you make a good living and you get paid to learn how to do it. You don't have $100,000 or $150,000 in student loans to pay back. You get paid to do it, and it's something you can be proud of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Bob, thank you so much to you and Culinan Rigging and Erecting for taking the time to talk to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.